What is the bedrock that you can ground your experience on such that you do not get swept away in all the tides of misinformation in order
Mm.
to live your best life or the good life? How do we interact with each other? What does wisdom say? What does love say? What are our guiding principles? What is it that we want to be the expression of our life?
Why this album? Is there a specific kind of overlying theme that you would say is applicable for this album, and how is it necessary for us in the current climate of our lives and in our culture?
I guess what I would say to that is, and what it ties in with, like in the zeitgeist of today in our culture, in 2026, is that the truth sometimes lies to protect itself. Like, in other words, we can see this very clearly with emotions.
Hmm.
Something happens and there's an emotion, let's call it anger. And so, what's the truth? I am angry. Okay. What's beneath it? If
Hmm.
we do that deeper dive, many emotions are acting as a mask or a protector of a more vulnerable expression. Maybe I'm actually afraid, but anger comes out because the truth, I'm afraid, is too painful or too tender or fragile. So some part of me throws out a safer truth, which
Hmm.
actually is not so true. The main theme of the album, what is the bedrock that you can ground your experience on such that you do not get swept away in all the tides of misinformation or misguided um, um, advice or opinions in order
Mm.
to live your best life or the good life, if we want to go back to like the ancient Greeks and their methods.
Hmm.
Um, we really um, have challenges if we try to pin our well-being on the so-called truths of all the different sources that bring us the news of the day, or
Hmm.
even just each other. It's very hard to speak truthfully. We are storytellers. We tell stories, and stories are not bad or wrong, but they're also not necessarily um, the concrete facts of what actually happened.
Hmm.
So this whole thing has been a process of, what do you trust? If you get a feeling um, uh, that leads you in a certain direction, um, and then later you realize, oh wait, no, this thing that I did was not for the right reasons. And then, I mean, you can just keep going round and round and round, but the question of the album is like, what do we hold as our foundation that helps us to live our life the way that we really want to? What's
Hmm.
functional, if you want to say it that way, in the light of, the more we open to our inner experiences and do more of the inner work. um, I mean, to just point into the spiritual direction for a second, which the album in a lot of ways is pulling the exact opposite direction. Because I think people can get wrapped up in a lot of spiritual bypassing. There's a lot of
Hmm.
unhealthy um, ways that people use these kinds of modalities to avoid dealing with things concretely. There's a lot of beautiful things in them too, but it's that balance of, we are in the material world, and I don't think any of us should say one way or the other anything that's not in our experience. So to not say there is a spiritual world, to say there is, how do we interact with each other? We could interact in a lot of different ways, but what does wisdom say? What does love say? What are our guiding principles? What is it that we want to be the expression of our life? Yeah.
Hmm. That's so important. So important right now as we all sit in in the chaos of the world, which is not a new thing. Like we've all always sat in the chaos of the world. That's just part of the deal of incarnation, right? Um, but that's yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Um, I love the title of the album, "The Raven and the Fire," and I'd really like you to talk about, what those two forces represent to you. And do you feel like the Raven and the Fire are kind of opposing forces, or are they part of the same process? Um, if kind of someone has listened to this album as a journey, where does it begin, and where do you feel like it might end?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Um, well, as far as the Raven, post fire, um, I really started to consider my own roots in different ways as someone who, is, as all of us in the United States, by and large, from like European, who are not native peoples, um, we don't necessarily have a feeling of groundedness and rootedness in a tradition that we can say, yeah, I have been on this land for my, my father's fathers, 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 mothers. Don't necessarily have that in the physical being in one place, but also not in a spiritual tradition or a shared history of, you know, I'm connected to these people who did this thing. It's more, I'm my own person and I've had these friends and I've done these things and the past doesn't really. I
Hmm.
like history, I like philosophy, I like a variety of things, but it's not like I am Welsh and my people have been here for the last 1500 years and I know more or less, don't have that sense. But the reason of the raven is my name Brahm in Celtic means raven. It means the raven. That's the meaning of the word Brahm.
Hmm.
And so I had a whole lot of different experiences that kind of I followed in different ways and just became curious about. Like in inner child work, you have these dialogues where you use one hand, your dominant hand, to be the you of now, addressing a child part, that you use the other hand, the non-dominant hand, to have these kind of dialogues. Um, and and they also can come as kind of, I mean, it sounds bad to say hearing voices, but we do have this experience of our inner monologue or dialogue. It's different for different people. The fire kicked up a lot of different things for me. And so I started to get into these different practices. And one of the things was to consider my own name, Brahm Christopher Gartner. And Brahm, the way it's spelled currently, Brahm,
Hmm.
ties to three different spiritual traditions. It ties to the Indian traditions of the Brahman. Brahma
Hmm.
is like a creator god. It ties to the Abrahamic tradition, Abraham, Brahm, Abraham. It ties to the Celtic tradition, where Brahm means raven, and the Druidic traditions are something that have been very interesting to me over the years. Um, so I was getting more into this and talking to my parents, all right, why did I get that name? Well, my mom knew someone with that name, but the spelling was the Celtic spelling, Bram, Bram, but they
Hmm.
pronounce it Brahm.
Hmm.
And everyone was mispronouncing it. And so the second day she put an H in my name. So that what was clearly tied to one tradition, the Druidic, the Celtic tradition, became confused, you could say. So, not to say I'm a druid, nothing of the kind, but just to say I've been curious to explore these different things. Like my last name, Gartner, means gardener in German. I had the
Mm-hmm.
Swiss German line. At some point, they were doing gardening. Well, that is my current profession. It is what I do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Christopher, we could go into all the names, but anyway, I was doing more of a deep dive on myself and literally how I'm called in the world and things like that, and why I don't feel like I have a strong tradition that I can name. I don't go to any temple or any church or any. I mean, I could, I have here and there, but they don't really grab me. I like
Mm-hmm.
The Celtic church, some say, is the woods, is the forest. And so I've learned a lot from a lot of spiritual traditions. I like them, but circling around to like why the raven and the fire, it really felt like it was time for me to do a deeper dive on, okay, what would I like to circle in more on at this time in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was getting in touch a bit more with the Celtic side of things. So that's where the raven came in and all the myths of Odin's ravens bringing messages. There's a huge, rich tradition what the raven symbolizes, and then fire and spelling it PHIIRE, a creative
Mm-hmm.
look at the fire. So the fire is not some terrifying thing that literally burns our houses down or all that damage. It's it's the like the mythological fire, the alchemical fire. We're looking at a creative fire, and it's the fire that
Mm-hmm.
gives birth, and it's a line from one of the songs, "Twice born," And in the Christian tradition, they're twice born with water. You get baptized and you're born again. Well, in this mythos of the album, the
Mm-hmm.
protagonist is twice born through fire, and there's some traditions that have that kind of uh, a second birth as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the Raven and the
And
Fire.
I love that. God, that's so good. Do you feel like they're opposing in some way, or do you feel like they're kind of unified? Um, the Raven and the Fire.
Well, it's a great question. In some ways, they're like the light and the dark. And this
Right.
album, in so many ways, is really looking at lightness and darkness and all the complexities of it because there's the light that blinds just as there's the light that illuminates. And
Mm-hmm.
so the album is basically saying, don't trust any fixed notion. Don't say the light is only good and don't say the dark is only bad because in the shadows is the gold, from
Mm-hmm.
the shimmering void come all things. So there's the darkness that seeks to take you out and the darkness that really wants to take you in and help you come into truth.
Mm-hmm.
So so the raven is literally dark. It's a dark bird, but it brings messages, it brings insight. So it is a symbol of light in the album's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the protector of that protagonist who goes through a lot of different situations and has a lot of challenging forces coming at it. The Raven is always the protector.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whereas the fire is literally light and bright, you can read by candlelight and so on. But it's also the thing that burns down your forest and
Mm-hmm.
so uh, I think it's a little bit more complicated than they're dancing together. They are together, maybe the totality of um, all the stuff that we have to handle, the light and the dark in its positive and negative forms all kind of swirling together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not so simple. It's like they're a koan almost. They're it's like they're you can't really say they're opposing, you can't really say they're unified. It's like something in between. But I like this symbolism of like the raven almost acting as a psychopomp or as like a Virgil in some way that brings you through the fire to be reborn. Um, is that like a good interpretation, or is that am I kind of missing the mark on that one?
Yeah. I guess that what I would just say instead of like a Virgil, like basically the raven represents the truth that you're afraid of. It's kind of
Mm,
like the cave in Star Wars where everything that you bring is all that's there, right?
That's
So
good.
it's
Yeah.
so so I don't know. When I think of like a Virgil, it's kind of like, hey, you know I'm good, Dante. I'm gonna guide you. We're gonna go someplace dark, but you know you can trust me. The Raven shows
Hmm.
up what in Poe and all these things. In the Middle Ages, there's a legend that says Noah, before he sent out the dove, he sent out the ravens, and the ravens never came back. And you can find all these medieval like tapestries of why they never came back because they're pecking out the eyes of the corpses, and they humans be damned, you know. It's a dark bird, you know, but
Yeah.
but I think the point of using it is to say. Um, we really have to make friends with our shadow in order to integrate, or we act on the surface and we present in one way, but really behind it, it's like there's niceness, but there's not kindness, and we cannot be
Mm.
trusted. We don't know how to say no, and therefore our yes means nothing. And so we really have to somehow make friends with the darker truths which the raven represents, in order to be someone that you can trust because they're integrated and they have their shadow with them, and
Hmm.
almost their shadow goes out before them, and they're not at odds with it. And can look you right in the eye and tell you something that's real instead of
Mm.
hiding from what we know is true about all of us. There's a beast inside all of us, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
it's useless to say the chaos of the world here, and then here we are. Well, I got chaos, you got chaos, everyone listening to this, right? We've got a beast inside all of us. In Italian, you say il monstro io albergo dentro. I make a home for the monster in my heart, or the monster lives in my heart in some
Yeah.
sense, you know?
Mm.
So it's that Jungian thing of the shadow work, and that as much as we are the light, we are also the evil of the world, if you want to language it like that. But it's
Yeah.
looking at it in a hard way, but it's also it's not a devil, it's a protector. It's
Hmm.
something to be
Yeah.
made friends with.
Yeah. The reconciliation with with the the truth again. If we're gonna kind of come back to the that kind of that concept of like being whole in the totality of what it is to be human. And that is, the 10,000 joys, the 10,000 sufferings, all of the minutia of the human experience, and that does include the darker aspects of ourselves. Gosh, that's really good, Brom. That's really good. So I wanted to ask you about the whole creative process. What does the songwriting process look like for you? How do you sit down? I know you said that there was that kind of instance where you were transmitted most of the album, but kind of what did that look like after you kind of were given this thing? How did you kind of flesh it out? Um, do songs come to you fully formed, or do you kind of have to build it piece by piece with the lyrics, with the music, with the structure of it all? And was there a track on this album that surprised you, while you were making it?
Yeah, beautiful question. Um, yeah, I mean, I can tell you just very concretely. So, in terms of that night where like 11 songs just kind of came through me, and obviously there was tweaking along the way, but the lyrics, um, basically the way it worked was I knew the themes. The themes would come to me. Oh, this experience that happened, I need to write about it.
Hmm.
Okay, so focus on that. All right. And then something came. All right, what's next? Oh yeah, this one here. So it was thinking about these concrete experiences that I had in that whole year, from the fire to the night after the fire, a full 365 days. Um, there were certain concrete things that had happened that I needed to address. And so then the lyrics flowed from that. And then I went very um, like in a very organized fashion down the list. Um, I do have a lot of classical musical theory and background. I've taken years and years and years of formal study. And so what I did was I kept it very simple, composing on a piano, on a keyboard, and just going through. There's something in music theory called the cycle of fifths.
Mm,
Music is very math based, and so I just started it the way a person who was learning the piano for the very first time, the keys that they would be playing in. So the very first key is in the key of C, which if you can visualize a piano, that's all the white notes. All the white notes in the
mm.
piano, that's the key of C. It's the simplest key to begin with because you don't have to remember which is the black key that I add. No, you're just dealing with the simplest thing possible. And so I went just very structured through, all right, this is the first song, and we're doing in Western thinking, kind of you could say the first key. I'm
Mm.
simplifying this greatly, but that was kind of the thinking along. And then song number two, all right, we're gonna hop the cycle of fifths and we're gonna go um uh like this for each song.
Hmm.
So everything was kind of structured that way. And then my voice dictated it. I was starting each song had a different approach to it. Like the first song was very like polyphonal, like without really chords, but having different counterpoint and melody notes happening at the same time, and then my voice going over the top. And then through the different
Hmm.
iterations, it shifted. But I had a very intuitive process for kind of the download, if you will, of the
Hmm.
lyrics, and then a very structured, logical approach to actually choosing the keys and then the tonal backgrounds of those songs. And then
Interesting.
I guess and then the song, which really is my favorite, um, came in a completely different fashion. It's the one that's just called Fire,
Hmm.
PHIIRE, um, which for me is really like the central song and statement of the album. That one came, I was just playing. I played around with, again, just those white keys. However, you can do something in music that you can do a tonal shift. So it wasn't in C major, it was in A minor. Minor keys have a heavier, more sorrowful feel to them.
Okay.
I was playing the key of A minor, and that song, the lyrics just channeled through me as I went. So that was a totally different process than the whole rest of the album. And
W-
it's one that
w-
stands out for me the most.
Do you feel like that was the one that kind of surprised you the most when you were making it?
I would say so because I I had all those songs come out at the same time, and the connecting theme was the fire, and yet I didn't have a song that directly referenced after the fire,
Mm.
integrating all of. I had ones we're in the smoldering ashes and we're wiping the ashes on our forehead, and we're in the grief
Uh-huh.
of our childhood and all the rest of it. But I didn't have one of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Um, and so when I realized I needed that song, um, I just kind of opened up and this song just came out fully formed. But it was interesting to me that I hadn't thought of it at the start. That like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
there have been all these gifts, all these things from the ashes we do rise again. That wasn't on the first album list.
So in a way, that song almost represents like the return. Like if we're thinking about kind of the structure of initiation, like we leave the comfort of normalcy, we go through our traumas, and then we make the return. Do you feel like that song specifically represents, okay, the fire kind of took the normalcy away. It showed us the truth. We bear the trauma of that truth. And now what happens when we can kind of reconcile with that truth?
Well, I'd say it's almost. it's the song before the return. The
Mm,
return, the final song of the album is My Light, where the
hmm.
main character has gone through all these different arcs, dealing with all these challenging forces and influences in their life, and going from more fear-based way of interacting, the adult world, you cannot trust people, work is, modern form of like wage slavery. Um, and that as a child, if you think of how you see the world, imagine you were 8 years old now or something, looking out at the world. Well, you might see a job that you really would like to do. You might think, oh my God, what the heck is happening? Like, what is this world that adults are making? I am like justifiably suspicious of it. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure the future that I have here. I don't see something that I really want to do. I want to keep my imagination. Grown-ups don't seem like they have that. I want to keep that magical child piece. I'm looking around and people are not treating their bodies well. They're not treating each other well. I'm a little confused about that whole situation. So, so like the real return is when that character comes through all that, the fear goes away, they realize, all right, you know what? We've all been, handed a whole lot of adversity. Adults are really, they have their children pieces as well. I can join that world too. None of us made this mess. We all have to do our best with it. And I'm looking at the light and the gifts after looking at all the ashes and all the things. And so it's just a declaration of, I do have light, you do have light, we do have light, even through all the shadow and all the darkness. So that's like the real return, I would say. And this is the one before that. This is the shifting of consciousness where it's like, all right, you know what? Things are hard, things are dark, but we're going to survive, we're going to be okay. To
Hmm.
like, oh, wait a
Hmm.
minute. Uh, Not just that, we're back. We're back to the Grail Castle, and this
Hmm.
time, we are worthy of accepting the Grail. Like it's not about survival. Like no, this is
Yep.
it. This is the garden, even though it seems like the garden's on fire.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I love that. uh, and I feel like that's kind of the heart of the album is really that piece that you just spoke to, and really what that song represents, the title being the fire, is really the central fire from which all the other songs are kind of orbiting around.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, the rough arc is, um, you know, it's a child. Some big things happened. The fire really in the chronology of it happened in childhood. Um, and then
Mm,
they're surviving it the best they have, and that could be a divorce, it could be a lot of different things.
yeah,
Each one of us, it was different, and I mean that could be a question that the album poses to each and every one of us is, what was your fire,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
What
hmm.
was the thing that took you from, if you had a phase of your childhood that was like, hey, I play, there's sunlight, there's this, to like, oh my God, the house is on fire in some way, as a
Right.
metaphor. Um, so that incident happens early on, and then from that, they have all these different challenges and influences that come into their life and kind of try to push them and pull them, but nothing can really be trusted. We have
Mm,
teachers, and that's wonderful, but a lot of times they have their own agenda, right? And if we kind of stick to um, like mythology, especially the Arthurian Grail mythology, the guiding principle for anyone trying to do that Jungian individuation, um, which is such a beautiful piece of the West, is you go into the dark forest where there is no path, because where there's a
Hmm.
path, there has been another, and where there's been another, that path is not your path.
Hmm.
And so, um, yeah, the fire on the album happens real early in life. We all have a different fire. And then
Hmm.
all these different influences has come into our life and pushed us this way, pulled us this way. And we at some point need to kind of make peace with the fact that like Socrates in the ancient Greek tradition is like, the only thing I know is that I do not know. And then everyone else is like, well, okay, Socrates, it seems like you also know some things. Well, yeah, okay, it's a little more complicated than this. But but at some point, how do we navigate that fact that we don't really know um what ultimate truth is? We don't really
Mm.
know why our society is the way it is, why our family is the way it is, why we are the way that we are. There's just so much unknown, and I mean, you kind of have to spend a life or lifetimes if you really want to kind of get to the bottom of it. You also have to get to the bank and do your work and all this. So it's perfectly valid that some people are at a point where they're like, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And I think
Yep.
that's the point of the album too. Like, bless you for that route. Like, do
Mm.
what makes sense to you. If you want to make a paycheck and have a family, that's a perfect answer to life's mysteries.
Hmm.
To just say,
Hmm.
to hell with any mystery. I don't care at all. Let's order a pizza, you know? Let's not get swept
Uh,
away in delusions of grandeur or truth or falsity. Let's what's functional? Friendship,
mm.
kindness, you know,
Yeah,
roll the dice. How do you want to do it?
I love that. Functional spirituality, right?
And
Yeah,
materialism.
and
Yeah.
materialism, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
though I love it. Like, God is in doing the dishes. God is driving your car. Coming back to that, and I think something that you kind of the beauty of the album itself, and something that you spoke to earlier, is the reflective nature of the album. This album isn't necessarily your story, Brahm. It's our story, right? It's the fact that, like you said, we've all had a fire. We've all had that experience of something that has just come swept through and just kind of, like you kind of keep referring back to it. The house is on fire. What aspect of our lives where that has happened, and what were the consequences in our actions that led us to um, our truth in a way. And I really really admire that about the album, because I think that music is so pervasive in that way of transmitting a specific story to us. So you listen to music and you can't help but get impressed upon the story that the artist is making it. And that could be about their own heartbreak, or their own glory, this, or whatever. And something that's beautiful about this album is that it is really a blank. It's a mirror. It's really just a mirror. um and we get to choose the story that acts as the format or blueprint from which the music itself can act as a lens for us to navigate through um, the kind of through line of the story itself, or the album itself, rather.
Yeah, and it's an exploration of grief. It's a
Hmm.
looking strongly and firmly at the fact that we cannot put into the words of everyday life the deepest feelings that we have. You could
Mm.
say, like, why we even have a mythology is you just take one example, let's say a relationship. So all kinds of dynamics that come up, right? But if you were to say, like, imagine a very toxic situation, like right at the end, for anyone to say like, hey, how bad this made me feel, you really have to kind of reference like an ancient Greek and say like, I feel like you're a Medusa and you kill me with your eyes. You can't just say like, hey, when you say that, I feel kind of bad. Like, no, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. Like, you kill me with your eyes.
Mm,
Okay.
mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, we need the myth to tell a truth because
Yep.
we get lost in the cheapening of our experience. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have a language that touches down to how we really are feeling. And there's so
Mm-hmm.
much grief that has not been expressed, and there's no culture for expressing grief or even acknowledging that. So we have this culture of distraction to avoid the monster of grief. If you don't
Yeah.
acknowledge it, it becomes a demon, right? All that
Mm-hmm.
repressed grief um, becomes a demon that, in shadowy ways, will tilt your hand, and you'll find yourself
Mm-hmm.
doing things sideways in relationships, sabotaging yourself. All these ghosts of the past come back to haunt us until we look at them and see, oh, that's not a ghost. That's a scared child, or that's,
Yep.
something that I need to resolve. Um, but I think
Yeah.
that's that we have a culture of running. And at a certain point, it's useless to run because there is nowhere to run anymore. And so we either run
Mm-hmm.
off a cliff and do something so um, jarring that it shakes us up in some way, or it takes us out. There's so many destructive tendencies that people have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but really, what's driving it is a lot of pain and a lot of grief. Is one interpretation. And so the album speaks to it with that mythic language to really kind of get at it. And it's an invitation to all of us, like on a track like Gone, where the main character is just screaming like "Gone, gone," it's all gone. You're the
Mm-hmm.
4-year-old child, and everything's just been burnt up. But really feeling it. And like, all right, I'm down the ash. I'll wipe the ash on my forehead. Like I'll take this pain and I will own it.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just say
Right.
like, well, you know what? That was really hard, but I'm older now. Like, no, honor that pain and that grief with the language that really is going to speak to it and give it a
Mm.
voice that it really
Mm-hmm.
needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, the honor of it all. I love that also of like, understanding that the demons, these ghosts of our past, um, while you were kind of referencing that, it made me think of, the story where the Buddha, you know, invites Ravana in for tea, right? Instead of trying to like, oh, go away, go away, go away. It's just like, no, he just wants to be accepted and acknowledged and treated like a not like a demon, right? And I think that that's telling to the parts of ourselves, these ghosts of our own past, where we try so hard to maybe just grow out of them, right? Like, oh, I'll just grow up and I'll get a job, and if I have, a family, and then the house and the mortgage and all that stuff, then all of that stuff will just kind of like go away. But like you said, they surface and they kind of move our hands in these directions, and we kind of self sabotage here, and we do something over there, and all the while, these parts of ourselves just want to be acknowledged and honored, with what you're saying, with that language, with that mythic lens, to give it, to exalt it in some way. So it's not a ghost or a demon, but rather it lives, um, as a human with the human experience that we're all kind of striving for with these incarnations. Um, What parts of yourself ended up in this album that maybe you didn't expect?
Well, no, truth be told, I didn't expect any of it. I've been making so much music that's it's not connected to my deeper feelings. I'm like a journalist. I see things, and so I just put a mythic lens on it, and it's out there in the world. I have kept away from my own heart and just gone through storytelling as a way of kind of distancing and not focusing on myself, on critiquing society and critiquing the world, if you will, and not really just saying, okay, let's look at the microcosm here that's speaking
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
see where all this mud of the world lives in my heart, and just really do a deep dive there and have the courage to share it from that point.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that like, oh, I, Baumgartner, on the 4th of July of 1990, had this thing happen. No, that doesn't have to happen, I want to be something that's going to be of service, generally speaking. But I put much more of my heart into this than I have into anything else as far as my music goes. And I really didn't expect that. I was really the whole process in those months leading up to that night was all right, I've done this, I've done that, I could do a little more of this, a little more of that. Hadn't even occurred to me until that night, like, why don't I actually tell these deeper truths that directly tie into me? So
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing was a surprise, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty raw. It's
Yeah.
pretty raw.
Yeah. Was there anything difficult or uncomfortable that you felt was hard to express when kind of creating the album?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of these things were inspired by dreams or inner experiences that we don't have a culture of speaking to,
Mm-hmm.
and um, we don't know what to do with that or how to deal with that. The fact that, you know, in some form or other, all societies had some form of a shaman, some form of a person who had visions, some form of a person who was interacting um, in an imaginative way with the world, who had a sense of the world as alive and all the things of the world as alive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, um, the whole really exploring the mind from that angle of watching the thoughts. It's a classic meditation technique to set your mind on the breath and observe the thoughts coming and going, and just noticing how bizarre so many thoughts are if we actually are present to them. Um, there's so much that's uncomfortable that surfaces, you know. There's a lot of beauty and wonder in the mind, but there's a lot of like ugliness and darkness as well. And so really kind of trying to own as much of that stuff as possible, and also hold it a little bit in the balance of we don't really know that much. If we stop and think of what is a thought, where does it come from? And there's so many different thoughts and theories that people have put out in the course of human history, but we
Yeah.
really don't know too much.
Mm-hmm.
There's one Buddhist teacher who puts it this way: a thought is kind of a little tyrant in the mind that takes us over. If we do have a habit of being present and aware, we're walking, we're drinking this, we're doing this, and all of a sudden a thought takes us over, and now it's 20 minutes later or an hour later, and oh wow, what happened? I just got into this whole drama in my head as I was driving the car or doing this or that or the other. Whoa, I was gone. I
Yeah.
was in the past. I was 20 years ago. What is
Mm-hmm.
that? What are these things?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking of thoughts, in the West, I think we really like to, on the one hand, aggrandize thought is how we make our technology. We think about things and all this kind of thing. And the other hand, we're very unconscious of what the content of our thought most of the time actually even is.
Mm-hmm.
Or we gloss
Mm-hmm.
over all that
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable things, or
Yeah.
we'll turn on any kind of a noise distraction to try never to be with our thoughts. And how many people, if they reflected, would say alone they are, not to say in bad company, but in challenging company. Hmm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about. So
Yeah.
the album uses this idea of demons a lot as the different and I don't really want to even say voices because that just sounds like kind of crazy talk, but the different thoughts that come in and out,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking
Mm-hmm.
at them as like, who are you? What are you? What is this? Is this a
Mm-hmm.
parent? Is this the voice of somebody else? Is this something I saw? Is this what the heck is
Right.
it? With
Right.
just open curiosity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. The mind, as Ram Dass put it. I mean, I don't know where he got it from, but I just remember him saying it about it's a horrible master, but a wonderful servant, right? Yeah, yeah. The thoughts are like little parasites that take us over. Um, do you feel different now that the album's made?
well, I do. I feel like it's still like the process of the album. Each time I hear it and the things I'm writing, it its influence is continuing in my life. And I mean, the whole language of inner child work is only something that I've been really focusing on these last couple months, and yet the album I recorded it quite a while ago. Um, and so. Like every iteration I come back and now like I'm working on the album art, I realize new things, different things. And um yeah, it's really just continued to like shape and inform what I'm doing in my actual life, which is, I'm finding old photo albums and I'm
Yeah.
finding 6-year-old Brahm, 11-year-old Brahm, baby
Mm,
Brahm. And
mm,
I'm putting those photos out and I'm thinking about who I was at that time and different things that happened and really trying to reconnect with different parts of my life that my grandmother did a huge amount of like candid videos. So we have of
wow.
me before my second sister was born when I was the baby.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of energy and lightness and brightness. And it's interesting to see the contrast between me and my older sister, who was more like stern and severe and like this.
Hmm.
And I was just like a happy little copycat. And that shifted when I love my younger sister, but when she was born, I wasn't the youngest one anymore. And
Yeah.
it was a different dynamic. And the dynamic between my older sister and I shifted. But I'd been doing this kind of work for a long time. I've been aware of like a 6-year-old, something happened, 11, something happened. But I didn't even think about that at 3 years old, there was a big shift in the family dynamic. And so, I mean, most of us do have a sibling, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of us don't have like our memories start well into our childhood. And like, well, until like 7, maybe I have one memory or something. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Hmm.
maybe you should dig
Hmm.
into that. Maybe you should just never dig into that. But the fact is, like, that kind of an angle, the album has continued to have that kind of effect. And also like doing like as best I can, like some genealogy, handwriting some family trees of, all right,
Mm,
these are the people I'm connected to from England, from Germany, from Italy, from
yeah.
these were their professions. This is a bit of my history, my roots, what I'm connected to. The album
Hmm.
has opened a
Hmm.
lot of doors for me, and I feel like I'm only just crossing the threshold on a lot of this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's continuing to be transformative in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I mean that
Yeah.
central image of it is the phoenix that rises from the ashes is that kind of the resurrection piece, and then the raven that's just sitting there or it's protecting in some way. It's the absolute truth of all the darkness and all the insight, all of it It's all
Mm-hmm.
in one symbol, and then here you're coming to life again, you know? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of um the heart of the album. We're all stuck somewhere, and what's the Phoenix element that when it comes into your life will take you where? And what's the Raven element? What's the dark thing or things that you really don't want to look at and that you
Mm-hmm.
needn't, but maybe in 5 years or 10 years or tomorrow, you do open that door a little peek and what might your Raven be, you know?
I love that. Yeah. If you could, I know we kind of talked about one track specifically, but if you could pick another one and maybe just explain a little bit of the story behind it, and what should someone kind of listen for in that track that they might miss the first time, um, and what were you feeling when you were kind of creating that track?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I'd like to focus on the song Swords to Plowshares for that. And it's a story that came to me. I had a feeling I was at this certain gathering and there was an interaction between two people. And when it ended, one of the people said, "May love reign," as in, may love be the governing force in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it hit me so hard. And I didn't know why, and I still don't know why, but I started to think about that, and certain lyrics started to come to me. And I love this image of turning swords into plowshares. You fight the fight that you need to fight, and then um, the tools that got you through that adversity then become vehicles for transformation and peaceful living. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not staying in the fire that you need to get through something, the anger or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, to protect yourself. But you come through that and you do find yourself maybe in something closer to peace or harmony, etc. at the end of
Right.
all your struggles, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All those other things will burn you up in one way or the other, twist you around. But the song actually it has a whole circle to it where the plowshares start by being turned into swords because we're dealing with, you know, another time. It's kind of harkening back to a golden age and a family. A lot of us have stayed single and haven't really, we had challenging family dynamics growing up. And so we've done what we've done, but by and large, we've lived more or less kind of the single life, and maybe we're not considering children or even maybe a romantic partner, etc. So this song is kind of speaking to a person who in their daily life is living that, but this is kind of a dream they have where they're like, you know what, maybe I would like to have a family, and in that realm, which has to be another realm because in this one, it's not going to happen, or it's just But I'm
Mm,
imagining kind of a golden time when,
mm,
I could have a full family and partner and the this dream that's in some of our hearts that we don't realize outwardly. Um, and and then in that time, kind of snakes come into the garden and there's, the war and the conflict of the outside forces trying to get you to be aware of something different. And maybe in this song, it's that the characters have forgotten their connection to something else than just the family life, the material life, etc. And so in this song, they go the route of connection with nature and
mhm.
they reconnect with what they call the old ways. And so it's a song about finding your roots, about making a space, a dream space where the life you really would love to live can fully be expressed and without any worries of how would it happen or when, etc. You just make a golden realm inside yourself where you can dream fully the dream of your heart and you drop all the blinders that, you know, a lot of us, I think, if we kind of look at that blank page and like, what the hell is the dream of my heart? Like, I don't even know because it would be so painful to look at it and realize I can't
Mm-hmm.
have it. So I don't even look at it. I couldn't even tell you. I'm numb to it. The song is about actually breaking through that and figuring out what that thing is for you. And then that thing will have its challenges and you find your way through those challenges. But so that song starts with, they're just doing farming, idyllic homestead life, and they've got the kids and the family, and but snakes come into the garden. All right, we've got to address this. So those plowshares are turning back into swords. We're connecting
Mm-hmm.
back with what we've forgotten, the old ways, and we're standing up to that fencing partner, that sparring partner, that adversary, and we're saying,
Mm-hmm.
no, we're having our boundaries in line, we're protecting ourselves, and then we can come back to the garden aware this time at a higher octave. If Adam and
Mm.
Eve are children in the garden, we are going to be adults in the garden. We got thrown out, we did what we had to do, the deeper work, and now we come back consciously. It's a very Jungian theme.
Damn, that I'm happy you spoke to that song. That's my favorite track off the album. It just, yeah, something about it really spoke to me, and I'm happy you kind of explored it and kind of shaped the story around it. Um, because I've listened to the entirety twice now. Um, And yeah, I'm just happy you kind of explained it. Those themes and those images and stuff were not maybe something that I myself was able to kind of comprehend, but listening to you kind of give voice to the whole expression was just that was really special. Yeah, thanks for that. That was really awesome. hmm Um, so if someone only hears one message from your music, from this album, what would you want it to be?
Main message is that we come from a culture that doesn't acknowledge what is true for us. And most of us, or a lot of us, internalize that message that maybe we have a shadowy idea that something's off inside, but that no one is really doing the work. So why should we? We kind of get
hmm
a sense there's not really a culture of honor or valor or values. And so, why does it matter if we walk by that, Coca-Cola bottle on the ground right next to a trash can that we or anyone could easily, you know, clean up the situation, make it right? Why do it? If if no one is um, standing in the light, has anything to aspire towards, why should we do it? The message of the album
Yep.
is no, even if you don't see anyone around you that you believe, first of all, we don't know what is happening for other people, and we never will. So don't take that as how you live your life. You connect with yourself. If you feel, called to it, you do that inner work, even in the face of not seeing anyone else as a role model. The album says, take yourself seriously, like that message above, the oracle at Delphi, those two words, know thyself,
Yep.
um, that for you, it does matter. And
hmm
so if you need a point of authority to tell you, then the album says, I the album am willing to be that point of authority for you. It does matter to take your life seriously, to take your inner experience seriously, and to explore it, even if you don't see anyone else doing this around you, and to invite yourself to eventually be that role model for other people that you exploring and discovering can come to a place where you can actually be a role model for others who can, take inspiration from, oh wow, I mean, just to say one example, how many people's lives were touched by a work like Star Wars that really did a
Hmm.
deep dive into mythology and the heroes myth. I don't care if you like it or you don't like it or this, that. It touched a lot of lives, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so getting in touch with the deeper expressions of our own being um, are a tremendously valuable and worthy pursuit, regardless of if anyone is or isn't doing that as well. So
Hmm.
that's the takeaway of the album.
Ah, man, that's so beautiful, Brom. I'm so appreciative um, that you kind of dreamt this whole project into being. I think it's really necessary. Um, Not just, it's necessary for the times, certainly, but it is a timeless message in and of itself. Um, and so I thank you personally for creating it, giving it to the world. Um, I guess one last question is where can people listen to it? Where can people find um, some of your other creative works? And what's next for you after this?
Thank you. Well, first of all, Cody, thank you so much. This is such a pleasure and a treat to be doing the podcast together and to be doing the interview together. Like I really enjoy your very thoughtful, the depth you bring to the interview and the enthusiasm and just how well versed you are in mythology and alchemy and so many different spiritual traditions and how all of it kind of comes together and you ask such poignant, beautiful questions. Um, as far as where to find the work, I've been trying to make it simpler and easier for people. So all the album can be found on YouTube, just as simple as that. If you type in Wild Ravens, Wild with a Y, um, the whole album will come up, and then all I'm taking all my other work from Wild Ravens. If you just put that into Google, it'll come up on Bandcamp, it'll come up
Hmm.
on SoundCloud, but slowly but surely I'm putting everything on YouTube so people don't have to be going anywhere else, keeping it simple.
Hmm.
I also do a lot of creative writing, and people can find that under the Runners, Wolf Runners, and that's on Substack at the moment. And in the future, there will be a book, but at the moment, there's a growing collection of writings that are all on some theme that touches all our lives, from different relationship dynamics to critiques on society, all through the lenses of these different characters who are between the ages of like 16 and 20, depending on when it is, and how they interact with each other from that point of they haven't gone into the work sphere yet. They haven't compromised their life at all. They have their full imagination as well as their budding, you know, libido, and
Hmm.
they are just pure expression. They don't hold anything back. And they like to have fun as well as really addressing the depression, suicidality, every taboo topic that touches the lives of young people and honestly, all people, all things that we have to keep in the shadows, they explore from that youthful, exuberant 16-year-old side that just can tell
Hmm.
a crushing truth like this, and then a joke that cuts sideways, and then laughing this way, that way over pizza, like just to be accessible, but really touch everything that's dark that we have to be afraid of, mental health crises, like I said, suicidality, drug addiction, everything that's
Hmm.
like, oh my God, we can't, sex,
Hmm.
everything just as it is. So that's the Wolf Runners, that's on Substack.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, the podcast. there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's what I'd like to plug at the moment. So
Yeah.
YouTube, simple.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Honestly, it was an absolute pleasure, Brahm. It was really fun using this platform to chat about this album. I know it's been really near and dear to your heart, and I loved it. I think we'll just put the link in the description when we upload this episode. That way, people can kind of just jump right to it. Um, yeah, in the future I'll have to do another interview with you for your writing. Just because that the writing process is just so interesting. I think we could have a lot of cool discussions on that. Um, but yeah, thank you once again. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, thank you as well. I mean, this to me is such a treasured space, and I look forward to being able to interview you on things that are near and dear to your heart. And I'm so grateful for this space that uh, we are co-creating together, and just the power of that witnessing, that presence, that ethic of not interrupting, of hearing out, of bringing our full selves, of speaking what really matters to us, and not referencing the norms of the culture, but referencing everything that's mattered to us of all time. And we can go into talking about the ancient Greeks, we can go into talking about Jungian psychology and alchemy, and it's just an extremely special and precious space to me. And I'm so grateful to you for this kind of an explored, kind of common brotherhood of exploration. And yeah, there's no price that can be put on that. So yeah, just deep, deep respect and gratitude. Uh,
Oh, I love it. I love you, brother. That was beautiful.
mm.
Well, until next time, folks. We need a cool tagline. We need a cool like sexy sign off thing. We'll think of something.
Yeah, maybe for next episode we'll ponder
Yeah, we'll
that.
ponder something. Cool.
Cool. All right. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
can I
everyone, for
want it.
listening. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Be well, and yeah, good luck.
Yeah. I love that. Good luck. Good luck. Yeah, until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.